For 12 generations, people have been singing this line, "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me." Next line. I once was lost, but then I found my way. Is that what it said? I once was lost, but now I'm found. God finds us. Okay, we can seek. As a matter of fact, Jesus called us to seek. But if we go all the way back to the garden, we find Adam who had sinned, and Jesus finds him, or God finds him. And he has been finding people and wayward sinners ever since. There are people that seek him. Jesus said, "Seek and you will find." But are people seeking God? I mean, Paul says it in Romans. No one seeks God. And yet we're called to seek. Yet we know it's God who actually does the finding. So what are people seeking? Even when they're called to seek, what is it inevitably that people are seeking? Thomas Aquinas put it this way: the reason we think people are seeking after God when they're not is that they are desperately and earnestly seeking for those things that only God can give them: happiness, meaning, freedom from guilt, peace. So if you encounter someone that says they are seeking God, just point them to Jesus. He will find them. He's the one who will actually do the heavy lifting. Jesus finds us. And this is how I want to start this morning, because this passage that we're looking at starts exactly that way. John chapter 1, verse 43. The next day, Jesus has been calling disciples to himself. The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now, this is like hide and seek, right? Parents with your toddler. You're playing hide and seek, but you know eventually you're going to have to go, "I'm over here." And they do the same thing. They hide, and they're like, "I'm over here." So it's like, it's hide and seek with Jesus. Jesus has to go, "I'm over here." And then as you begin to walk towards him, he's the one that actually finds you. We do our part, but Jesus does the heavy lifting. When we are leading people to Jesus, okay, we can point to Jesus, we can share about Jesus, we can walk with them, we can invite them, we can help, we can serve, we can listen, we can share Jesus, point to Jesus, but Jesus is the one who ultimately does the finding, who ultimately does the saving. Last week when we looked at John the Baptist, we learned to be like him, we will go into wilderness. We will go into the wilderness of other people as a voice pointing to Jesus. And then we trust him to do the work. Today we kind of see the opposite. We're going to see that Jesus finds Philip, and then Philip is going to invite other people into his wilderness. He's like, "Let's go. Come and see." So Jesus finds Philip, and he says to him what? "Follow me." If we're pointing people to Jesus, this is ultimately what Jesus is going to ask them to do. He's going to find them, and he's going to say, "Follow me." So what did Jesus mean when he said, "Follow me"? Jesus does not intend to leave us as he finds us. He does find us, but he's not going to leave us like that. He's going to say, "Follow me." All right, which means Mark 8:34. This is where Jesus defines it. "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. I once was lost, but now I'm found." And Jesus says, I found you so that you would deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. This is why I found you. And follow me means deny yourself, which means you're not first. This life is not just about you. You are not first. When he says deny yourself, this is a new prioritization to your life. Get things in order. And Jesus is now first. Deny yourself. My money is not mine. My career is not mine. My house is not mine. My relationships are not mine. My children are ultimately not mine. My life is not mine. This is a reprioritization. Deny yourself. Jesus is first. All to Jesus I surrender. All to thee I freely give. I will ever love and trust you. In your presence daily live. I surrender all. This is what it means to follow. Deny yourself. And then it says, Jesus says, take up your cross. Now, we kind of hear in modern culture and songs, like, yeah, that's my cross to bear. Like, man, it's been a really tough week at work. Man, it's my cross to bear. Jesus is not talking about just the difficulties of your life. Any first century Christian, when he heard take up your cross, knew what Jesus was talking about. He wasn't talking about a rough week or a rough relationship. He said, reprioritize your life. And here he's like, get a new perspective on your death, because your death now has meaning. Your death has significance. And you're going to deny yourself and you're going to walk with me. And it's going to take you to a place where ultimately you die for me. This is a different perspective. On the day I die, will it be said of that person, he denied himself? He was all in for Jesus. Will there be significance in that death? Follow me, deny yourself, take up your cross. Walk the same road. Follow. Walk the same road as Jesus. This is a new dedication each and every day. Whereas those first two, deny yourself and take up your cross, a little Greek, or the aorist imperative, that's a once for all. You did it once. I denied myself. I took up my cross, and now that's a done deal. Done deal. Now I'm following him, which is the present imperative. It's like now, every day, this is what that looks like in my life. I'm walking this out. I'm following Jesus. People should be able to look at me and go, that guy denied himself. That guy took up his cross. He follows Jesus. It's evident that he is surrendered to Jesus. It is evident that there is submission of the will to Jesus. So I want you to see a testimony now from James Horton, a person who came to the place in his life where he said, I submit, I surrender. Okay, let's show that now.
I remember when my father revealed to me that he wasn't my biological father. And I remember saying that, does that mean that I'm not going to be able to be tall like you and play basketball? And it was such a kid thing to say and think, but for the first time, I think it challenged my identity. I started to wonder about who I was and where I came from. And later in my life in high school, I found it starting to lead to a lot of other things, and it started to be a situation where I was coping with who I was through drugs and through alcohol, and just trying to find any way to be happy or to be free. As soon as I finished high school, I met Jessica in 2007, and for the first time, I felt like I had a better purpose. I started to look forward to things, and I started to figure out who I needed to be. I became a do Christian. I just did all these things to kind of show myself to the outside world, realizing now it wasn't a real faith. So then I joined the military in 2011, had to convince Jessica to marry me and prove that I can do something with my life. I remember joining the Navy because I needed to get away from where I was at, and I thought it would grow me as a man. And I found that because of our schedule going in and out of port, and then me still wanting to be in the party scene, still wanting to go out with my friends who were younger, who didn't have kids, and alcohol took a big effect on that and wanting to have fun, and that caused a lot of strife between me and Jessica, and the issue of me not being physically there, and even when I wasn't mentally there, and we got to the brink where we started talking about the D word, we started talking about divorce and separation, and it was a very hard time for us to be able to. There was I remember a moment, we were in the house that I met Jessica in. I didn't know exactly what I was supposed to do, but I knew that I needed to submit. And getting into reading my Bible more, there was just an overwhelming kind of outpouring that this is what I needed to do. And I needed to submit so that way I could take refuge in who Jesus was and what he did for us. And August 2021 was when I finally felt, for the first time, I felt God. It was Matthew 11 when you get in there and come to me, all who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And for the first time, I found myself finding rest. I felt the Holy Spirit poured into me. And for the first time, I was able to submit and actually understand that Jesus died for me at the right time, a weak, ungodly man, and I think he was providentially working through every situation in the past to show me that I am weak, but he is who I find my strength in. And that is what has completely changed my life and my family's life. I remember for the longest time, I allowed my past to be an obstacle for who God was and what he was trying to do through me. And I think now that looking back on it providentially, realizing that my past is actually a pedestal for God's glory and what he did to change me. And it can never be anything that I did. It was looking back, I can see that it was always through him, and that was the only way that I could do it.
In Christ alone, my hope is found, and he is my light, my strength, my song.
Jesus found James. And James, in being found, realized I can't stay the same. I have to deny myself, take up my cross. I have to submit to Jesus. And that changed things for him. And often I find that Jesus uses us to find people. Right? Jesus finds people, but he often uses us in the process. So let's go on and see how God used Philip. Verse 45 of John 1. Philip found Nathanael. Now Jesus found Philip, and now Philip finds Nathanael and begins to speak to him. See, Philip is doing for Nathanael exactly what Jesus had done for him. He's entering into the process. He's allowing himself to be used. Now, if Nathanael was Philip's friend, I'm wondering here, how many of you have friends that are possibly like Nathanael? They're a bit skeptical, doubting. What can we learn from Philip about pointing to Jesus? Here's a few things I think we can learn. We can learn that it's important to start gospel conversations. We can learn that it's important not to respond with argumentation. And we can learn that it's important to invite them to experience Jesus themselves. So this is what we learn from Philip. Start a gospel conversation. Verse 45. He finds Nathanael and he says to him, "We have found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." You see what Philip does? He speaks Nathanael's language. He knows him. He knows how to frame pointing to Jesus within the context of Nathanael's world. He's Jewish. He understands the Torah. So he says, "We've found the one that the Torah, that Moses was talking about. And he puts it in a current context. By the way, the guy's from Nazareth. He's the son of Joseph. He's able to speak Nathanael's language. So, the person that you're going to point to Jesus, or maybe you're pointing to Jesus right now, what is their context? What language do they speak? How can you speak of Jesus within that framework? So when I was in high school, I had a friend and we would play music together, play guitar together. That was his context. And so I would frequently just play or sing songs about Jesus. Later on, this guy actually recorded some music, and I got one of his cassettes, and in it said, "Thanks to Dan Hardesty who led me to Jesus." I was like, well, I don't even remember doing that. But obviously there was some pointing going on within the context that he understood, music. So I'm wondering, within the context of your friend's world, what might it be? Maybe it's cooking. Maybe it's soccer. Maybe it's astrophysics. I don't know. Maybe it's Harry Potter. Who knows what their world is like? And if you can speak that language and point to Jesus within it, that's a gospel conversation. And when they say in response, you know, Christians are kind of weird, and the Bible, it's like an old myth. Here's the second point. You can start the gospel conversation, but if they respond in a negative way, don't respond with argumentation. Philip, 46a, Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" Come on. So, why are Christians so mean? So I Googled that. Why are Christians so mean? I got 188 million Google results. On Reddit, you can read lots of people's comments about this. One guy is like, they always argue with the Bible. Seriously, imagine if you met a flat earther and he said he doesn't trust science books and you respond by pulling out a science book and reading it to him. Well, you know, Christians, they just argue with the Bible and don't even believe the Bible. So respond to their, what good can come out of Nazareth? Respond to their, what good can come out of the church? With gentleness, with respect. So that's what Peter says, 1 Peter 3:15. If someone asks about your hope as a believer, always be ready to explain it, but do this in a gentle and respectful way. So sympathize with their experience and inspire them with your experience. Sympathize with where they are and inspire them with your experience, because this is exactly what Philip does. He starts a gospel conversation. He doesn't respond to the negativity with argumentation, and then he says, "Come and see." I would like to invite you to experience Jesus. Verse 46b, Philip said to him, "Come and see." Henry French says, evangelism is speaking and living. Speaking and living the good news of God's love, God's justice, God's forgiveness, God's compassion, and God's salvation. Usually living the good news will come before speaking the good news. So notice what Philip, when Nathanael goes, what good can come out of Nazareth? He doesn't go and see. So just go and see. What does he say? Come and see. The implication is, let's do this together. Let's walk this path to Jesus together. Because we're the earthly means God is using to accomplish his heavenly purposes. We're going to have to get down into the nitty-gritty. Come and see means enter into the wilderness of my life and see Jesus there with me. I'm going to let you get close enough that you see the wilderness messiness of my life, and you're going to see how Jesus and I work through that. Come and see Jesus. It's not go and see. How do potential Jesus followers see us following Jesus? How does this potential Jesus follower see you denying yourself? See you taking up your cross? see you following him, see you practicing communion with God, community with these people right here, commission with a heart for those people who are hurting. Last week, I challenged you to go into the wilderness of other people and point to Jesus, into the dirty, dark, difficult places of their life and point to Jesus. And this week, the challenge is to let people come into your own wilderness and let's people see how Jesus is working things out there and you're walking with him in the midst of it. Come and see Jesus. Come and see him in my life. Now, that can be pretty frightening. Pretty vulnerable, pretty transparent. Come and see. Philip was not inviting Nathanael to do something that he wasn't doing himself. It wasn't go and see. Come and see. Walk with me, and you're going to see Jesus do the heavy lifting. Places I can't. And Jesus can do the heavy lifting. Moving on in verse 47, Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him. Jesus is never caught off guard when you bring someone to him. He's never surprised. Oh, I wasn't prepared for this. He sees it coming. He is ready, and he has time for whomever you lead. He has all the time in the universe for that person. And trust Jesus in that moment. Jesus knows your invitee better than you do. Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him and said, "Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom there is no deceit." He knows who they are. He knows all about them. He says to Nathanael, there's no deceit in you. In the King James, there's no guile in you. You are a man who calls it like you see it. You speak your mind. You're not afraid of the truth. You know, when you said nothing good can come out of Nazareth, you just say it like it is. And you know what? You're right. Nazareth ain't much. But there's a pretty cool carpenter shop there. Have you ever been there? Perfect conversation for Jesus to enter into. But he knows Nathanael to his core, and he affirms him, and he loves him. He meets him where he is, and he loves him. What freedom to have Jesus find you, know you completely, and still love you fully. Whew, that feels good. A lot of us never experience that kind of love. So what does Jesus know? When we bring someone to Jesus, just recognize he knows them fully. What does he know? He knows their past. He knows their future. This is evident. Verse 48, Nathanael said to him, "How do you know me?" And Jesus answered him, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you. I know your past." Many people that you point to Jesus, they just need to know that God was not distant in their past. That he knows it, that he was there. Like Hagar. Genesis 16. Maidservant of Sarah and Abraham, they can't have children. Sarah says, well, just have a child with Hagar and it'll be ours. She has a child, and there's bitterness, and there's rejection, and they just send her on her way. Go back to Egypt where you came from. And while she's wandering in the wilderness, desperate, God meets her there, and you know what he does? He tells her her story. He says, I know your past. He just tells it all. I was there. I was not distant. And so she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, "You are a God of seeing." For she said, "Truly, here I have seen him who looks after me." Sometimes people just need to know God was not distant. And can we, like James in your testimony, see our past, no matter what it is, or the past of people that we're bringing to Jesus, can we see it as a pedestal for God's glory? What a great thought. God will get glory through this. What does he know about Nathanael? What does he know about anybody you point to Jesus? He knows their past, and he loves them. He also knows their future. 50 and 51. Jesus answered him, because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree. Do you believe? You will see greater things than these. And he said to him, truly, truly, I say to you, you will see heaven opened and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man. He knows your past, and many people just need to know that he was not distant. But he knows their future, and many people just need to know they have a hope in their present experience. There's more. There's a hope ahead of me. So Jesus references Jacob's dream from the Old Testament here. This is what you're going to see, angels ascending and descending on this ladder to heaven. So when Jacob was traveling in a wilderness, and he lays down, and he falls asleep, and he has this dream, and God meets him there, and he reveals a future hope to him. He dreams of a ladder that goes from heaven to earth. In Genesis 28:16, then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. Why is Jesus quoting that particular passage to Nathanael, giving him a hope for the future? Because what he's saying is, I'm that ladder. That dream that Jacob had. And what you're going to see, Nathanael, is that I'm the ladder. Ascending and descending on the ladder. This is the place you need to be. On the ladder of Jesus. Because ultimately, the future of that person you're inviting depends on Jesus alone. He will find them, and he can save them. We need to trust him to do the heavy lifting. Jesus takes Nathanael's story, and he will do this to people that you point to Jesus. He takes their story and puts it within the framework of the grand story of the gospel. Submit your story to mine is basically what Jesus is asking. Tim Keller says the gospel is not just one more story pointing to a greater reality. It is the reality that all stories are pointing to. And so does ours. Come and see. Come and see how Jesus redeems your story and places it within the context of the gospel. Because we all long for that. We all long for sacrificial love. We all long to be fully known and fully loved. We all long for this desperately, but it seems so elusive in our reality. It seems like he's trying to reach it. This is why stories resonate so powerfully. Why does Beauty and the Beast resonate with us so powerfully? Because it is a story about people trapped in a dark kingdom where they have lost their future identity and they long for it. And the spell cannot be broken unless the great prince shows up and does what only he can do to release them from the spell and restore them to their original identity. Why do stories like that resonate with us? Because they point to a grander story. The story of the gospel, the story of Jesus. Jesus alone can break the spell of doubt. Trust him to do the heavy lifting. Point people to Jesus. Invite them into your wilderness. Say, come and see. Come and find a way to make sense out of your own story. Verse 49, Nathanael answered, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. Because Jesus finds him, because Philip said, come and see, Nathanael goes from skepticism to submission. From doubt to devotion, from defiant to a follower of Jesus. Because Nathanael saw the Jesus who saw him. How? Through a simple invitation. Philip invited, come and see. Walk with me as I walk with Jesus. and I'm going to trust him to do what I cannot. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing for others to get close up and personal in your life? Come and see. So John the Baptist taught us to enter other people's wilderness and point to Jesus. Philip teaches us to invite others into our own wilderness where we point to Jesus. But both teach us to trust Jesus to do what we can't, okay? Just give the invitation. Come and see. Trust Jesus to do the heavy lifting.